Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to go through all the settings in Logic from top to bottom and explain what they do and what you might want to set them as. There's a lot of settings and preferences in Logic and it can be overwhelming no matter what your skill level is, so I figured I would go through all of it and explain it and hopefully help you make sense of all of that. So if that sounds good, make sure you like and subscribe and I'm going to get started. To get started, we're going to go Logic Pro Preferences General. And we're just going to work left to right. The one thing you need to do first, though, in order to properly follow this video or to use Logic as its fullest, is to go to Advanced and turn on this Enable Complete Features. Logic comes by default in a kind of watered down like basics state that strips away some of the advanced features that you might not need. But generally, if you're learning the settings, turn this on and you'll have full functionality of Logic. So once you do that, you can check that box, go back to General, and we're going to start project handling and move on from there. So startup action. This is what happens when you first open Logic. And so I prefer it on do nothing, which basically nothing happens when I open Logic. It's up to me to go open a project or start a new project. That's just how I like to work. But you can have it open the most recent project, which is whatever you last had open when you close Logic. Open an existing project. You can select from a template. You can create an empty new project, or you can create a project using a default template, or you can have it ask what you want it to do. Again, I like do nothing. I think the default here is to open your most recent project, but that can be a big time waster every time you open Logic if it opens a project you don't want it to. So I like do nothing. It saves a little bit of time. If you want to do the create new project using template, say you're a podcaster, right? And you have like every time you open Logic, you're starting a new podcast. You'd go put this on template mode and then select template, and you can go select your podcast template. That's just one way you can use that setting. Okay, when opening a project, ask if current project should be closed. This is that dialog box that pops up like, hey, you're opening a project. Do you want to save and close this one? Generally, you'd want that on. You do want to close your old projects because that'll free up CPU. The only reason you'd want to leave a project open is if you're copying data or files back and forth. Otherwise, yeah, leave that on. Export MIDI command, save single MIDI region as format 0. I don't know what this is, so just leave it on, leave it at the default. If you need to dig into MIDI stuff, this might be something to look into. Auto backup. So this is the autosave feature, like how many versions you want it to autosave retroactively, I think is the word. I like it on 10, that's a good middle point. As you increase the number, obviously it's gonna be safer. You're gonna have more alternate versions, but that's going to use more CPU to store more of those alternate versions. So as you decrease the number, you will be a little riskier, but better on your CPU. So I find that 10, I think 10 is the default as well. 10's a good middle ground for that. Or you could turn it off. I would not recommend that because then it will not autosave. So just do I like the last 10. Recent items is what shows when you go to File, Open Recent. The system default is 10. Just leave it at 10. That's fine. Going to the Editing tab. Undo steps. Same thing as like the auto backup. The higher the number you go, like you'll have more undo steps. It'll be a little safer. The lower number you go, you're going to have less steps and it won't be as safe, but you're going to save CPU. So I like 20, but if you're doing some really heavy projects, you might want to lower that to save some CPU. You could also raise it if you want, but I feel like 20 is a good amount. This add last edit operation to region name, you can just leave that off because to me, it just crowds the region area. Groove template edits immediately update all associated regions. I believe that's if you update your groove track, it'll update, everything else that's following the groove track. So you'd probably want that on. I don't use groove tracks a lot, so that's up to your discretion. Create new regions after splitting loops. Definitely leave that on because you want to be able to split your loops, right? Like you don't want to have to drag them shorter. If you have a loop out there and you cut it, you want it to actually cut. Okay, select regions on track selection. This is pretty cool because then if you click, like if I go click this simple analog lead, it's going to highlight all the regions in there. It makes it really convenient for just editing stuff quicker. Generally, if you click a track, like you're probably likely to go touch a audio region in there. Select tracks on region/marquee selection. So that's the other way. If I go and click a region, does it highlight the track? I personally like that off, but you can do what you want there. Select region or tracks on marquee selection. So see, I go and like select a track, then it pulls it up there. That's up to you. Okay, right mouse button opens up shortcut menu. So when you right click, this is the shortcut menu. If you put it as a signable tool, you'll actually get a third item up here and you can just change whatever it does. So like now it's the scissors and I can right click and immediately scissor something. So if you're doing a lot of editing, that could be good. It gets in the way for me because I like the shortcut menu, but you could also do the shortcut and tool menu where it'll change what your mouse does. So, you know, you can go to pencil and change to pencil. This also just, it's a lot to look at. So I just like the shortcut menu because if I need to change the tool, I go up here. I hardly ever change the tool. I almost always use these two. So that's what it does. Trackpad. I won't talk about trackpad. I don't use the trackpad. My laptop's tucked under there. Now right here, this is big. Pointer tool in tracks provides fade tool click zones. So this means if this is off and you bring your mouse up to the top here, nothing happens. It's just a loop, either a loop or extend audio region. But if you turn on this fade tool click zone, then at the very top, you'll get the ability to do quick fades. And that is killer. That's like a Pro Tools kind of workflow. So definitely have that on. You can also experiment with marquee tool click zone. So when you get to the bottom half of a region, it'll automatically give you the marquee. I thought I'd like this, but it messes up my workflow too much, but that's what it does. Okay, quick swipe and take editing click zones. I like that on. Limit dragging to one direction. That is not the boy band. That is when you're dragging something around, does it, like if I were to take this right here, can I move that up and down at the same time? Or if you turn it on in tracks area, you can only move it left and right or up and down. You can't do both. That's what that does. I don't like that on personally. I like to be able to move it everywhere because you can always turn on snap and it'll kind of stay relative to a position. So that's what I do there. Piano roll editor, region border trimming, you can leave that on. Okay, cycle pre-processing, you can leave that off. Catch, you can leave all this stuff on the defaults. Notifications, just skip this. Accessibility. If you don't need accessibility, you can leave this alone. Moving on to audio, devices. This is my favorite page. I go here the most. You're going to want to leave core audio checked all the time. Your output device is where you're playing back to. So that should most likely be your interface or your MacBook speakers or headphones, whatever you have. Input device, you'd want to pick ideally your interface or something like that. If you've created an aggregate device, you can set it here. If you don't know what an aggregate device is, it lets you sum together multiple audio interfaces or audio devices and use all of them at the same time. If you want to set that up, I have a video about it up top. I/O buffer size, basically I/O buffer size, set it to a lower number when you're recording, as low as your computer can handle, because this is going to reduce latency, but increases the processing on your computer. If you're mixing or not doing anything like real-time audio monitoring, set this up as high as you can because it'll use less CPU for your latency and more CPU for what you're actually doing. Resulting latency, this is just telling you, like, if I were to record right here, I'd have a 48 millisecond round trip, like from strumming the guitar into the computer to back. 48 milliseconds, that's too much. But if you throw this down to like 64, then you have an 8.9 millisecond round trip. That's a lot better. Okay, recording delay. This is if you want it to put a delay on what you've recorded, like going in, leave that at 0 unless you got a weird situation going on. All this other stuff you can leave on default. Processing threads, automatic, process buffer range, medium, multi-threading, playback and live tracks, summing, high precision, rewire behavior. If you're not doing anything specific, you don't need to touch these. General, display audio engine overload message. You're going to want this on because if you overload your CPU, you want it to pop up and tell you what's going on. Otherwise, you're not going to know what's going on. You won't know that you need to fix it. Sample accurate information. You can leave this on all the things. I don't know why you wouldn't want sample accurate information. Automatic bus assignment uses. So I recently changed this. I learned about it for this video. You know, when you open up like a new track and you're going to go software instrument and you're going to go to the library and you're going to pick just something, a glockenspiel. Okay. This glockenspiel, on default, it creates two buses, a small booth and a large church reverb. And that's nice. That's part of the sound. But if you are like me and have like a plan for all your buses, creating one of these is going to drop two random buses into your hierarchy of buses, you know? So if you put this automatic bus assignment uses, you can tell it like, hey, don't use anything below 32 for these automatic bus assignments. That also, like if you create a track stack, that'll use an automatic bus assignment. and it defaults to starting at bus 1. But like I like to mix with a certain hierarchy, and so I've turned this to, any new buses go above 32, which is like on this other page. So now all the automatically created buses go to this page, and I still have my original page right there. That's huge. I was like super nerding out about that when I figured it out. Software monitoring, leave that on. Input monitoring only for focus track and only when input monitoring is enabled. If you have this on, basically you have to highlight the track and arm it for recording and press the input monitoring button to be able to hear it. If you turn this off, you'll be able to hear any inputs when the input monitoring is on, regardless of if it's armed or you've clicked on it. So I like this off because then it's like a regular soundboard. Like if you plug something in it and the fader's up, you can hear it. You don't have to like deal with selecting a channel or anything. Independent monitoring level for record enabled channel strips. If you click this, it'll actually give you a separate record level. So like on here, the volume's pretty low on playback, but when I hit record, there's a record level. If that's off, then they both share the same level. So I actually like that on. It must have gotten turned off when I was prepping for the video, but I like that on because, when you're recording something, you probably want to hear it pretty loud, but that doesn't mean when you're playing back, you want to hear it at that level. So it lets you set 2 different levels. I kind of like working that way. That's up to you. Dim level, when you're in your mixer here on the very master output, there's a D. And so that's going to dim your output by a certain amount. And you can decide that amount right here. I think minus 20 dB is the default, and that's fine. So like, here's playback, and then I can dim it by 20 dB. So that's really convenient. If you want it to be more or less, you can change it, but that's what it does. Plug-in latency compensation, you want it on all. Playback pre-roll, you can leave that on. Low latency mode, I would leave that off because most things you wouldn't need to be in low latency mode. If you're recording, you might turn that on if you're having issues, but I would start with your IO buffer size before coming to low latency mode. Sampler, you can leave all of this as is. I left it all on the defaults. Virtual memory, same thing, leave it all how it is. Unless you're doing some super crazy stuff, the defaults will do fine for you. Okay, crossfades for merging and take comping. So like if I were to go comp this take right here, you're setting that crossfade amount. So that's 5 milliseconds. If I increase that, then you will get a bigger crossfade. I wonder if you can actually see that or not. Yeah, so you have to physically change it to see that. So there's a small crossfade. You can jack this up and have a big crossfade. Generally, like the 5 milliseconds is fine because you just need a little bit. So I'll leave it on 5, but definitely do what you like. Now you know. Crossfade curve, if you want it just regular, you can leave that alone. If you want it to lean one way or the other, that's where you change it. Scrubbing, I left all this on the default. IO assignments, this is for surround and like advanced audio output routing. If you're mixing in headphones or just on like a stereo pair of monitors, you're fine. Bounce extensions, don't change anything here. Input, same thing, don't change anything. File editor, these all pertain to when you open the editor on an audio file and go to this file editor right here. So do you want to be warned before processing a function by a key command? I'd say yeah, throw up the warning. Clear undo history when closing a project. You probably don't want to clear the undo history, just leave it there. It's not taxing your CPU, I promise you. Record selection changes in undo history. Record normalize operations in undo history. You do want to keep those because you want any action you do in the undo history. 5 undo steps is probably plenty. I hardly use this file editor. I don't know about you guys, but I left all that on the defaults. MP3, you don't need to worry about MP3 here because you can change it when you go to export. So if you go File, Bounce, Project or Section, and go to MP3, you have all the same options right here. So I would just change it when you're going to export and not worry about it in your main settings. Recording, your recording file type, you can either do AIFF, which is like an Apple exclusive thing, but it's basically the same as a WAV, or you can record right as a WAV file. Either one. When I export as a WAV, so I think that's the most important thing, but you can set this wherever you'd like. 24-bit recording, I like that on. I like to record at high quality. Overlapping track recordings. This is a bunch of what if scenarios for regions overlapping. And so basically you can go right here. So like when a MIDI region overlaps and the cycle is off, do you merge the region? Do you create a take folder? You can overlap them. You can create a new track, create a track alternative. I like merge because sometimes I'll play one part of a MIDI and then like another part, or I'll play the notes of the MIDI and then write in some pitch and mod wheel. I like merge for that. And I prefer the same thing when the cycle's on. I leave this replace on region erase. And then on the audio side, I like to create take folders no matter what, because then it just makes it really nice for editing later. It's all right there in a little package. Okay, MIDI. If you are not doing anything crazy with MIDI, you can ignore this. I'm not going to go into it because I'm not an expert on MIDI. So you're better off looking for a Logic Pro MIDI video from an expert. Moving on to display. Everything in here is going to be whatever you like because it's just display. It's mostly aesthetics. So appearance, system setting, you can also switch between light or dark. System setting, dark always, you know. Okay, Windows. Large local Windows menu, large inspectors. This is just going to change the size of certain things. Wide playhead, if you're into that. I am not. Show help tags. This is great because if you hold your mouse over something, you're going to get, it's like, hey, that's the editor. You can access it by hitting E. That's helpful. Default values, I turned this on because if you go in this region section, it'll tell you, hey, the gain's at 0. Otherwise, it's just empty. So I like seeing all the zeros. Show icons in new tracks dialog. So when you go right here to this new tracks window, this is with it off. And then if you turn this on and then go to the new tracks, you get this. This feels a little GarageBand to me. I don't know. Like I hear sound from Studio Capture. I don't like that. I want it to just like look regular. Yeah, I want to select my audio output. I don't want to tell you where I want to hear sound from. That's probably a weird side topic, but yeah, I leave that off. Show animations, that's like when you open Windows and stuff, does it? I like that. Displays, so display middle C as C3. I think default is C3. All of this I left as defaults. Clock format, if you want to change it, I like the regular clock format. Onto tracks. Show track bar or number while scrolling. I actually haven't messed with this one. We are learning together. This is probably better on a session with more tracks. Here we can simulate it. So it'll kind of tell you, I don't like that. It's not, no. Nope. Okay, track color, auto assign 96 colors. This is when you open a new track, is it going to be the static color, which is like blue for audio, green for MIDI, yellow for drummer, or will it auto assign colors? So like as you keep making new tracks, they're just going to be nice colors. I prefer that. I like the auto assign 96. You never run out of colors that way. Region color as track color, that just keeps it all plain and simple. I think by default, it used to be anyway, it used to be on individual. So like your track color could be blue and your region could be yellow. It's super confusing. So when you set it like that and change your track color, it's going to change everything on that track. That's generally what I think you'd want. Marker color is static. Oh, cool. See, we're learning together. Marker color. I would like auto assign for marker color. So I think that means when I come up here and create a marker, ooh, look at that. Marker, that's fun. Thank you for joining me as I play with colors. Oh, and then you close it and now you have the auto marker colors. I would definitely do that. That's better than just like no marker color. Let's get rid of some of them. Okay. Background is dark. You could do bright. You can do custom, whatever you want. I say dark all the way. Grid lines. You can change the color of the up and down and the left, right. You can just click the automatic if you want, but I kind of made them a little more bold. So you can just play with that. If you want a black or white, depending on what you like to see, that's what those do. This is going to be like how light or dark something is. I like them kind of brighter, but not in your face bright. Region settings here. Shaded loops. Basically, do you want your loops to be the same color as the original or darker? I like darker because it kind of lets me know, hey, this is a loop here. And then the show plus button next to drummer regions. The plus button adds another section, and I like to have the plus button there. Mixer. Okay, plugin window. Open plugin window on insertion. So when you open a new plugin, like when you put a plugin on there, let's put channel EQ. It opens the plugin. I like that because 99% of the time when I am adding a plugin, I want to change something on the plugin. So I like that. Okay, show recent plugin list in plugin menu. So when you go here to add a new plugin, like, do you want to see the recents? I like the recents personally. Level meters, this all has to do with your mix window or your info window. Peak hold time, this is when you have a peak. That little top section. So if you do 4 seconds, how long is it going to hold that peak up there before they fall? I like 800, but I could also see like 2 seconds. Return time is how quickly they bounce back. So very slow. It's going to look like this. And then as you speed it up, you know, they bounce faster. This is the recommended one. I think that's a little slower than I like to see, so I usually go to faster, the 30 millisecond one. It's whatever you like. I found faster feels the most like Pro Tools, so if you're a Pro Tools person, that would be your pick right there. Channel order, this is all for like 5.1 and surround stuff. So just leave it on default unless you are doing surround stuff, and then set it to whatever you'd like. Editors, piano roll, bright background. If I open up piano roll here, bright background, I don't like that, but you do you. If you are not creating musical scores, then you can skip this. I'm not going to get into it because that's a whole nother area. And again, that's not my area of expertise. Same thing with the movie. If you are scoring to picture a lot and need to do advanced movie settings, you can do that here. Automation, we will talk about. Move automation with regions. So when you move a region and there's automation associated with it, what do you want to happen? I like to ask, because if you never move, then you have to go manually move that automation. If you always move, then it's gonna always move and you don't have a choice. So I like it to just ask like, hey, do you want to move this automation over? I usually say yes, but it's good to not move it if you don't want to. Include trails if possible, you can leave that on. Pencil tool, hold for stepped editing or hold for curved editing. So if you have the pencil, let's put some points in, and then if I drag and hold with the pencil, it's gonna do like stepped editing like that. Or you can have it on hold for curved editing, and it'll do it like that. Some weird things to play with. I don't have either of those turned on. Well, I guess I leave it on stepped editing, but I usually use marquee, so I don't really go there. Snap offset. This is when you have snap automation on. So when you're in automation and you right click, you go to snap automation. This will offset it by 5 ticks. Sometimes if your automation is right on the downbeat, you'll actually get like some transients or something through before the automation happens. So that -5 ticks, it might be default by now. That'll offset it a little bit. Ramp time, I don't know what that is. Just leave it. I have it at 200 milliseconds. Write mode changes to touch. So when you use write mode and you're done, it goes back to touch. I like it that way. I don't really use write that often. And then write automation, when you go into write mode, do you want it to affect sends, pans, plugins? I think I just want it on volume, send, and pan. That way I don't mess up my plugins. Automation quick access, I leave that off. I've not used quick access. Control surfaces. I put in my notes, leave alone unless you want to do a deep dive. If you're not doing a lot with control surfaces, you don't need to worry about this. I don't do a lot with control surfaces, so I'm not going to go over it too much. I know how to set up basic ones. If you want to see how to set up basic ones, I can show you that in a video. So my info, I just put my name in these two and then move on. Put your own name though, don't put my name. And that is it. The last tab is the advanced, and you should have turned on enable complete features. That is a rundown of what most of the settings in Logic do. Let me know down in the comments if you have any specific questions or things you want me to touch on more. This was quite the lengthy video, so thank you to those who stuck around. If this video was helpful, make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.